Welcome to Make My Vision Real, a local resource for starting and growing your small business. The show's founder and host is Susan Swartzwelder, a small business specialist who helps people start and grow the business of their dreams. Today's show is sponsored by the Business Launcher Workshop, a workshop designed by women for women to make their business vision real. Find out more at businesslauncherworkshop.com. Here's Susan Swartzwelder.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Make My Vision Real. This is the first of many shows on a weekly basis that will focus on helping people who are trying to launch and grow a small business. It is my intention to help you make connections, learn about resources, and find inspiration to make your business vision real. On some shows, we'll have guests who will share their startup stories, and on other shows, we'll have guests who will include professionals who help entrepreneurs launch and grow their business. Today's topic is barriers to entry, why we start and stop. In today's discussion, we'll talk about the passions that drive what makes us want to start a new business and the barriers that keep us from doing so. We'll be joined by Shelby Spear, an entrepreneur who made a market for herself in Geauga County by offering professional services to local small businesses and organizations. Shelby has an accounting degree from Miami University and worked as a public accountant at Arthur Andersen and a part-time accountant at Royal Manufacturing Company. In 1997, she left corporate America to stay at home and raise her 3 children. Now she and her husband are only 2 years away from being empty nesters, and Shelby has begun her re-entry into the workforce, but in a much different way. So please join me in welcoming Shelby Spear to the show. Thank you for joining us, Shelby.
Hi, Susan. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Well, thanks for coming to the show. This is the first of many shows that we're going to have, and I thought that this would be a great show to have first because so many people are trying to start new businesses, and they feel like they have the will, they have that passion, but then there's just this barrier that comes up and it just stops them. And I think that barrier is different for every person. Mm-hmm. It can be a different barrier at different times. And I thought that based on some conversations that you and I have had in the past, that this would be a great show to start with because we've had that conversation before, you and I. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your business and how you got into it?
Okay. Well, first, before I get started, I just want to thank Susan for this wonderful opportunity to be here and that she's bringing this show to our local community because I think it's needed. I think people are out there and they're looking for answers. They're looking for inspiration to launch their businesses. So it's a wonderful thing for all of us to have.
Thanks.
So my business is Spear Consulting Services, and I provide small business support services, specifically web design, social media, creative marketing, desktop publishing, just all kinds of things where I can really help with the everyday tasks that small business owners have. And we all have a lot on our plate. So I started providing the services in January of 2012, and thankfully my business is continuing to grow. And I have a great respect for those trying to put a dream into motion. And I know how difficult it can be. And it's scary at times.
Very scary. Very scary.
So although I'm an accountant by trade, entrepreneurial endeavors are just really in my blood. My husband and I have done several things along the years. And I've taken the time since I was home raising my kids for many years. I took that time to learn and educate myself in a lot of areas in technology and marketing because I just wanted to keep learning even though I was home. And so teaching myself that, I'm able now to, when I started my business, I didn't have to hire a professional because I taught myself those tasks and those
skills.
And
so how did you learn those skills, Shelby? Did you take classes or did you learn it from the internet? How did you learn all that?
Mostly by, the internet, teaching myself.
Trial and error.
Looking at webinars, trial and error. When I have put my mind to something, I'll just sit there and
like web design, for example. I know that you've done some web design. Mm-hmm. You've done flyers. You've done sell sheets. Mm-hmm. The real creative side. Have you always been a creative person?
I do enjoy the creative side of things.
Yeah.
Yes, which is, it's interesting because I went into accounting, and not to say anything against
it's
accounting,
kind of the
but
wrong
there's
brain
not
side, isn't
really a lot of creativity there. So, but just the business background in general. There's so many ways to get creative with things.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I know in my business, I never really thought I was very creative, but as I started doing business planning and trying to help people see their vision through a business plan perspective, I found myself getting really creative in how I was spinning the story for them or bringing new perspective to their vision, even though I'm trying to see it through their eyes, crawling inside their heads kind of thing. So great. Okay. And so what made you decide to want to try to launch your own business and instead of going back to work and working for somebody else?
Well, leaving corporate America was bittersweet for me. Obviously, being able and having the opportunity to be home with my kids, raising them all these years is such a blessing, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Right.
But along with that came a challenge for me because I left a very professional setting where I was around people every day, very, high pressure.
Right.
I was, very involved. My days were busy from the minute I got there until I left. And it's just a whole different dynamic. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But it just took a while to adjust to that. And I have spoken to so many women over the years who have had the same mental, kind of battle with accepting that the role of being a mom is so great and it's so important. And it's okay. It doesn't mean we're not smart anymore. And it doesn't mean we're not qualified anymore, or that we went to college and now we're not using it. And so now we're not worthy. And, it doesn't mean any of those things. It's just...
but a lot of women feel that way.
They do. They do. And over time, that kind of thinking switched for me. And all my passion and energy went into my kids, and I knew that was the most important thing. But because I've had all this freedom and my schedule has been my schedule, the thought of going to work for someone else just really hasn't really been appealing to me. And which is why I took the time to invest in learning. And I didn't have to take continuing education classes for accounting, but I did continuing education for myself. How can I use my talents from home and make some money for our family and still be a mom at the same time? So that's really why.
So that's a balancing act in and of itself.
It is a balancing act.
Yeah.
But
And so why did you select the market that you did?
Well, I love Geauga County and I love Chardon. My husband grew up there. He lived in Chardon his whole life. I grew up in Leroy, which is just not too far away. But coming out there when we settled and raised our kids here for the bulk of their growing up, you just really get a feel for the people in this community, and they're just salt of the earth people. Everybody really looks out for the other person, and people I want that other person next to me to be successful, and they want me to be successful. And it's easy working alongside people like that because we're all in it together. It's all for one for all, and it's a blessing to live in a community like that. I
don't find a huge competitive edge out there in Geauga County. I live in Chardon, you know that. Our listeners don't necessarily know that. But being from Geauga County, the landscape is a little bit different, I think, out there than maybe in downtown Cleveland, where things are definitely more corporate, definitely more competitive. Out in Geauga County, it's very rural, lots of farms. The businesses out there are different. And so just the interaction with people on a daily basis is a little bit different. Right. If you're coming to work, you might be going in blue jeans, a flannel shirt, and knee-high boots. Right. And there's mud and all kinds of things all over your boots, and you're walking through the grocery store, Right. People used to laugh at me, and I say, yeah, they come with horse poop on their boots in the grocery store. But, that's farm, that's right. Farm country out there, and, right. It's a little bit more laid back, I think. And I think that there's definitely a little bit of a let's help everybody win kind of thing going on out there.
That's exactly how I feel.
Yeah. So, and so did you conduct any market research for your business before you sort of jumped into it, or did people just start coming to you?
Well, really how it worked for me is just having conversations with people in the community about what they were looking for, what services were they looking for. And I started just talking about the things I was able to do and to provide. Mm-hmm. And what I realized very quickly is there weren't many companies or individuals that were offering the type of service which I provide, which is really what I like to base it on is affordable. Mm-hmm. My services are affordable. I want to be the lowest price and the best quality, of course, but I know so many of the services I provide, especially websites, can be astronomical.
Yes.
The costs. And for a small business owner, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 on a website is not in the budget.
Right.
But having a website is a necessity.
An absolute necessity.
Social media is a necessity.
It's like not having a business card if you don't have a website. Right. I know that when I meet somebody and I'm interested in maybe finding out more about them, the first thing I do is go look for a website on their business card.
Right.
Recently, it's interesting. Recently, I met a woman in a networking function, and she handed me her business card, and she had an email address and everything, but there was no website. Mm-hmm. And I kept looking at the business card going, where am I missing the website? Right. And she didn't have one.
Right.
And it's not that it's completely detrimental to her business, but there's no sense of getting to know someone before you pick up the phone and call them. And I think that that's what a website does for people. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, 15 pages long. It could just be a single splash sheet.
Just something to get the information out there for people. Right.
I'm sorry, I digress.
Oh, no, no problem.
But anyways.
Yeah, and so the conversations I had really opened up the floodgates for finding opportunities to help people. And another thing that I have done, which I enjoy, is the training aspect.
Training people to do different things.
Yeah, especially with the WordPress websites that I build for people. I want them to be able to go in and manage their website themselves and save the money. I saved so much money over the years, and I want to pass that along to people and say, listen, you can do this. You don't have to know everything, but if you can do a few things, it's going to save you hundreds of dollars. I like the personal side of the kind of the way that I'm running my business, where I'm sitting down and I'm
side by side,
and I'm making friends, and we're saying, listen, this is how we'll do it. I'll show you how to, and call me if you have questions, instead of, here's my quote. It's going to be, this is $5,000, and it's going to be this much money to do all the updates, and there's no connection there.
Right.
And it's overwhelming.
Right. Well, and it's definitely overwhelming. You've done a couple of websites for me already, and what I appreciate the most about it is that everything is changing so fast that by the time you get a website up there, in about 2 years you're changing it anyway.
That's right.
So I've always told my clients, try to work in a budget of about $500 to $800 on an annual basis for website refreshes about every 2 years. It doesn't necessarily have to be completely redone.
Right.
But, as business changes, you're going to want to you're going to want to fluff fresh face, fresh technology. Things are changing every 18 months,
Or sooner.
Or sooner, right. It used to be 18 months, now it's even faster. So as you started to roll out these new services that you were offering people, what was their initial reaction? Did they embrace you right away? Were they kind of like thinking, okay, this is a little bit too good to be true. We've got somebody here that can do all these different things. I mean, what was the initial reaction to your market?
Well, thankfully, the reaction was positive. I didn't really feel people were skeptical, and it may be the nature of the community that we live in.
Maybe.
It's just that type of people. We're, like I said, we're all out for one another, and so I don't want to say it was easy, but it was definitely not as challenging as it probably could be or would be in most circumstances. But I was able to, just start doing some of the work. I got feedback that was positive right from the get-go. And, of course, that helps to build my confidence. As we all know, starting something, you want to, how is it going to work out? And, my clients seem to be pleased. And it's just been working out well. It's just been a very give and take relationship with all of my clients.
And so where do most of your clients come from?
They've all pretty much been in Geauga County. I've had a couple in Lake County. I have one now that I'm working with is coming out of Cuyahoga County. But so
you're starting to expand beyond the boundaries of Geauga County.
A little bit.
That's
but
great.
Most of them have been in Geauga County itself.
And so do you want to keep most of your business in Geauga County, or does that really matter?
I like being focused there just because I think
you live and
it's
breathe.
Where I live and breathe. And I think there's a lot of potential work to be done in the county because people are excited. Economy seems to be turning a little bit, and people are feeling
a little
good
better
again, a little bit better. Yeah. And I tell you, people have great ideas, and they have wonderful products that come to mind that they want to, bring to the market, and services that they want to provide. And it's nice to see that people are feeling a little bit more confident and wanting to share themselves with the world.
So let's talk a little bit about, since this show is about barriers to entry and challenges that you face as you start up, let's talk a little bit about some of the first challenges you faced when you started to research your venture. What did you find was the biggest barrier for you when you first decided, okay, I think I know what I want to do, okay, and you made your list of these are the things that I really like to do. What happened after that then? What did you do then? And what was that first major stopping point for you?
Well, for me, I think the biggest challenge that I had to face was my fear of failure and my insecurities regarding selling myself, selling my services. And, you have a sense of, I mentioned this at the beginning, feeling kind of unworthy. I don't know if that's the right word, but when you're out of the market, when you're out of corporate America or wherever you were for so many years, at least for me, I didn't feel I was adequate anymore to be back in a place like that. And, I'm an accountant by trade, so that was my sweet spot. That's where I was comfortable. That's what I was doing. And so I was educated in accounting. And these services that I wanted to start providing, I was self-educated on, right? So so
you didn't even have any kind of bar of measurement against what even what your competition was doing or what was acceptable practices in the industry, because you were self-taught, right?
I was self-taught, but what was interesting, I have done several other endeavors leading up to this that maybe we'll talk about, but finally when I started my consulting business, I felt okay saying, because someone asked me point blank just the other day, what's your background?
Really?
And they're probably thinking, well, I've been doing web design for 15 years and I've, been doing marketing for 5,
Was this a potential client?
A potential client.
Okay.
And I said, well, my background is in accounting and I have, haven't been doing that career for the last 16 years, but I've taught myself all of this because I have done all these ventures and I've had to put what I've learned to work for myself and for my own businesses. And I just really feel that I'm going to be able to help you and we'll work together. And I couldn't believe that I was actually saying those things, but I was. And that's the great thing about it.
But that was the honest to God's truth.
It was. And
what was their reaction?
They were fine with it. I was worried that they would think, oh, I really need to find someone more qualified. And, but I'm happy to say I did get the job.
Yay.
So, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Excellent. And so that person is probably going to feel so much more comfortable with you because you were real and honest. And
I think that goes a long way.
It really
does.
Being
genuine, being transparent and saying, listen, this is who I am.
Right.
This is what
you're about.
This is what I'm about, and this is what I can do for you, and we'll work together. If it's not up to the standard that you were hoping for, I'm going to make it right one way or the other. Mm-hmm. And I always tell people too, I'm not an expert at everything, and that's why I have people around me that are in the toolbox I can pull out and say, I'm going to refer you to this person because they're better equipped to handle that. And
that's why it's so important to build that network, people, really. And that's a show that we're going to talk about, too, is building the network out and finding people to sort of fill in those gaps So I'm getting the notice that we need to take a short break here. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and we'll be right back. Okay, and we're back now. So we're here with Shelby Spear. She's an entrepreneur in Geauga County who does professional services for small businesses, and we've been talking about barriers to entry. When we left on the break, we were talking about someone who had approached you about doing, a website?
A website. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and they had asked you what your professional experience was with doing the creative side and doing the websites. And you mentioned that that you had little professional experience with it, and that you were open and honest with them about what your experience was, and that you had done these types of things for other businesses that you've had in the past.
Correct.
And so it really wasn't a big barrier to entry for you for this particular instance, that you didn't have a tremendous amount of outside experience for it, that mostly you had done it for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so that would stop a lot of people in their tracks.
Yes.
Right there.
Yes.
Not being able to make reference to, I did this one, I did this one, I did
Right.
this one.
Right.
And so overcoming that, what was like your gut reaction to that? How come it didn't stop you?
Well, I think because if at first you don't succeed, try again.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yes. And it didn't stop me this time, but there were several other times that it most definitely did. And like I mentioned, I had been involved in several other entrepreneurial endeavors while I was at home raising the kids. And I've actually started up 5 other small businesses.
5 others.
5 others. And I say small businesses, but really just 5 other ventures that I was doing on my own as an entrepreneur. And I'm only here today talking about Spear Consulting Services. So that would lead one to believe that the others are no longer doing anything, but that's okay. And that's what I'm happy to share. And I could say to all of the listeners that I failed in all those areas because, I'm not doing that service. Or I'm not providing this product to people anymore. But they weren't failures. They were stepping stones. And it's really important that we remember that we're not supposed to succeed right away at everything we do. And we may never succeed in some things. I mean, we just have to keep trying. And when we believe in something, we go for it and we see what happens. And what I learned along the way is, I had a lot more to learn and a lot more to learn about myself, not necessarily about whatever the services or the technology that I was learning, but a lot of it was just who am I and who am I going to be when I go back out into the world and offer services to people. And there's a learning curve there because, especially as a woman, the insecurity can be overwhelming because I don't really know why, but it just feels like that's the way we are. We worry about what people think, and we worry about, for me, one of the biggest hangups I had was I don't want to charge too much money because I just want to help that person.
Right.
We're helpers and we're doers, and we're
taker-carers.
Right.
We take
nurture.
care of everybody.
Right.
We nurture, right? That
And
taker-carers, yeah.
How could I ask for money for this?
Yeah.
Well, because that's what you do if you want to have a successful business.
Right.
So.
But, and success is always so subjective, and one of the things that I tell my business launchers is being successful is really a state of mind. And so achieving goals, that's pretty black and white. You set a goal and you either hit the mark or you don't hit the mark. And a lot of times it's based on timing. It's based on quantity. It's based on quantity, value, whatever. But what a lot of people have a tendency to forget is that success is really a state of mind. It's not an object to be had. And it's really, for me personally, success is more of a journey. It's getting from point A to point B without killing myself or without, breaking an arm or whatever it is. It's about, am I able to do it gracefully and learn something along the way and give somebody something of value? So, but let's talk about, if you don't mind, about some of the businesses that you've had in the past. And did you see a pattern emerge with any of them? Did you get further each time you went? Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Sure. The first venture that I was involved in was with a friend and family member, my husband's cousin's wife, and we came up with a concept of providing a website that would inform people what family activities were available in Lake and Geauga counties. It was called Kids Etc. And there was nothing out there at the time. And because we were young moms and we had young children, we were always looking for fun things to do and places to take them. And they're just, the internet was just really coming into play back when we started doing this. It was not anywhere near what it is now. So I felt like we really should jump on this because, my goodness, people can be sitting at their computers and tap a few keys, and now I know where I can take my kids. So that was when I taught myself how to design websites. That was the first website I created.
Wow.
And it's funny because when I look back at that time, I had been reading, I can't remember which book I was reading, I'll have to think of it, but I think it was Wayne Dyer, Manifesting Your Destiny. And I
Great
was
book.
talking, it talked about being able to envision the success. Really, the suggestion was write down on a piece of paper, imagine that you have created what you're doing and now there's an article about it in the newspaper. Envision that and hang it up on your wall. So you're looking at the success has already been achieved every day. And I actually did that.
Really?
Scribbled out something on and, put a little
heading.
heading.
So you wrote the little article for yourself?
And put a heading on it, and I hung it on the wall by my computer. And I looked at it every day. And believe it or not, the News Herald came out and did an article and took a picture.
I'm getting goosebumps.
Yeah. So exactly what I had envisioned came to fruition.
pass.
Yeah, it
Wow.
did. And you would think, I'd still be sitting here talking about how Kids Etc. went on. We got an ad on Cleveland.com had just really started
I remember
their site
that.
back then. And so they put us in the family, whatever category, family activities on their site. And, it seemed like everything was going in the right direction. But then it was, okay, we've got the website, we've got all the content, we have all, but now I've got to go and talk to the people who want to advertise and pay to keep the site up and promote. And I have to go out and sell myself, and I have to sell the site. Looking back now, I'm thinking, how easy was that? But I couldn't do it.
You couldn't do it. Couldn't sell yourself.
I don't know what to say. I don't know how to present it, and maybe it's not good enough, and they're not going to like it. And ridiculous. It's ridiculous, really. Yeah. But that's the honest truth. And so
Sales
it fizzled out.
is a tough one to overcome. Mm-hmm. It is a tough one to overcome.
But the good that came out of that was I had a very good understanding of websites and, going through and teaching myself how to use the software and create it. So it was exciting. And then I was able to build more from that point. So, and plus it built some confidence. And I learned that if you really visualize what you want to see,
so that was a huge breakthrough for you.
It was
Was the visualization part.
Right.
And then what about the next company that came after that?
I taught myself another software, which was making slideshows out of pictures with the music. And now, today people can do that on their Macs. It's real easy. Everybody's
Some can do it on their iPhones.
iPhones. But it was relatively new at the time, so I started creating videos for people for special occasions, weddings, birthdays, just different occasions that they wanted to remember. And word of mouth, family and friends. Big thing for me here wasn't so much that I couldn't promote it because it was a creative part of serving people. I love the creativity, but I didn't want to ask too much money again.
Oh, it's the money thing.
It's the money thing. It was such a hang up for me. I didn't feel that I was worth a certain rate that I should charge. You know?
Did you have rates of other businesses doing the same kind of thing?
I did. And the funny thing is, mentally, I would look and be like, oh, I have to charge less than that because that just seems too high. And it's so weird because, I mean,
I wonder if that's a female thing. Or,
maybe.
I don't know.
It was definitely a Shelby thing, that's for sure.
Well, I've done it myself, you know, so, and maybe it's if I charge less, then I'm more likely to get the business or whatever. I don't know. I think the message that's on the other side of that from the receiver's perspective is why are they so much less?
Right.
And so the value is diminished.
Exactly.
So,
and I wasn't thinking that way.
Right.
Then.
But you don't ever when you're an entrepreneur. It's hard to spin that and turn your attention to how am I being perceived? Because a wise man told me a while back that his name is Donald Wayne McLeod.
Oh, I know Donald Wayne.
How you are perceived is your reality.
That's right.
And so that was a game changer for me. And so when I'm all sort of in the moment, if I can step back and say, how are you being perceived? You know, so bringing value and making sure that your pricing is at the marketplace is really important to make sure that everybody's seeing the value. What about the next one after that? You had another company after that, did you not?
Well, this was an interesting venture. My husband and I have been very involved in marriage ministry for years, and we went on a marriage encounter weekend in Cleveland, and we decided after that weekend that how neat would it be if we could open up a marriage retreat center for couples to come and get away for the weekend and enrich their marriages. And so, we had this huge dream, and we spent 10 years praying about the right time, the right place, if we should do it, if we shouldn't do it. And 10 years is a long time.
Yeah,
but we kept the dream alive. And we were blessed to find a property out in Newberry several years back. And we felt like it was right. We felt like it was right. Well, I'll get back to that in a minute. But so we bought this property, fixed up the yard, renovated the whole inside of the house, just really made it a very peaceful and welcoming place, opened the doors, and we had several couples and families would come, and people loved the place. I did the website. I did all the marketing material, the flyers, brochures, the mailers, everything, logo. Didn't spend any money on any of that, which was fantastic. But when there, I had to go again and ask people to support it, to find advertisers and market the property. And it's just ridiculous. I look back and I think, here was a great concept. Why could I not take, and it was, my husband worked full time, and I wanted him to be there with me. I need you to, you're better at this. You can sell, you can do the talking. I just, I need that security of you. But he couldn't be. I needed to be the one to go out to do it because he was working 50 hours a week.
Wow.
So we had to close the doors because if the rents or the people paying for the rental weekends isn't covering the mortgage, doesn't really
not a profitable business.
Not a profitable business.
Right. We got to do that selling.
Right.
We're going to have a show about selling. So yeah, it's a tough one.
Right.
It's a real tough nugget to crack.
Right. But again, I learned, more about marketing. I had to develop more skills in creating all of that, getting the design aspect of things. So it was a positive that you take away from that, and it just that the timing at that point, wasn't right for us.
Right. Right. So what do you think is the big difference this time? What have you done to prepare yourself for that? Because I'm sure you're selling, now, right? You've
I
been in
am.
business now for over a year,
Right.
18 months or so
Yes.
in this new endeavor. And, what do you think was the game changer for you this time?
Well, several things. One thing I can see looking back now is that the timing, everything happens. I have a very strong faith, and I can see that God's prepared me for where I am right now. And He knows what's best for us in His timing, not our timing. I mean, we think we have it all figured out. And all of these things that I have done leading up to this moment, there was a purpose in them, for teaching me, learning more, or growing as a person, maturing, getting a better sense of the business world. You name it, all the things that came to me as a result of all of these endeavors. And your confidence builds little by little, even though it didn't, the project or the business didn't quite get to where you wanted. You grew as a person through it, and I was able to gain that confidence. So I think that there's a lot to be said for things that, I don't like to use the word failure, but there's a lot to be said when things don't go quite the way you planned.
Mm-hmm. Right. There's three words that come to mind is the courage to try,
mm-hmm.
the confidence to keep going
mm-hmm.
when things aren't necessarily moving in the direction that you want, or you're afraid to try. You got to step that toe over the line of comfort mm-hmm. and get outside of your box, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the conviction to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And I think each time we go through an iteration of a business or we reinvent ourselves, that the experiences that we bring with us along the way help us to support and keep us moving in the right direction. And so we just keep trying, and that's what being an entrepreneur is all about.
That's right.
So I'm getting the message that we need to take another short break, and we will be right back. So we're back with Shelby Spear. She's an entrepreneur from Geauga County, and she's been with us talking about topics on barriers to entry and why we start and stop when we launch new businesses. So where we left off, we were talking about some of the obstacles that you came into from the last few businesses that you started.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about different levels of success and,
mm-hmm.
What warrants success. And so, starting new businesses is really a big challenge, and it can be really scary. And what was it that helped you or caused you to take that step with Spear Consulting from vision to action this time around?
Well, it's kind of an easy question, and I'm glad you asked. I had been at the bank back in January of 2012, and I ran across someone that I used to work with at Huntington when I was in summers of college, and we got to talking, and he was asking what I was doing, and I was explaining to him all the things I had done, and that weren't working out necessarily, but that I loved being an entrepreneur, and I had no intentions of going to work for somebody, but I just couldn't quite figure out how to make it work for me. And he says, I have someone that might be really interesting for you to talk to. And I said, who's that? And he says, her name is Susan Swartzwelder, and she's here in Geauga County, and she's an entrepreneur, and she writes business plans for people. And so he handed me your card, and I went straight home, and I sent you an email, which I thought, what am I doing? This is crazy. I don't even know this person. I have no idea who she is, but I'm just going to send an email and see what she says. And you got back to me, and we met at the coffee shop in town.
We met.
Right, because you drove in a blizzard and faced death on the way to meet me.
I remember because it was a horrible day
mm-hmm.
In that most of my appointments were canceled that day.
Right.
And I was just like, oh, I should just completely wash up this whole day
Right.
and just forget about it. And you were the only appointment that I kept that day.
Yeah.
And I remember walking out of that appointment, you were like this ray of sunshine sitting across the table from me. I will never forget this. And I hired you on the spot. I didn't even know you. I
Right.
said, I don't know what you're going to do for me, but I know you're going to do something for me and it's going to be great. And
Right.
you're hired and we'll work it out.
Well, what the listeners don't know is I didn't come there pitching any work to you.
I know.
I came there to say,
For me to help
how
you.
can I, these are all the things that I can do. These are the things I'm passionate about. Do you have advice for me on
Yeah.
how I can start selling myself and create something? And by the end, you said, well, sure, you can do stuff for me. So there we go. That was the beginning of
Yeah.
Spear Consulting
Yeah,
Services.
that's
So
right. That's right. That was a great day in my book.
It was a great day for me.
it just, we came together and the synergy that we have is just so exciting.
Yeah.
You help feed that passion for me.
Well, thank you.
So, yeah.
I wouldn't be sitting here talking in this interview if
know.
not for that day.
I know. I'm so glad we met. So if you could share one nugget of information with the listeners about starting a new business, something, something, it could be anything, that would help them move forward, what would that be?
I would say believe in your talents and abilities and don't fear failure. Embrace it because there's always something to learn from things that don't pan out quite the way you thought. God's gifted each of us with talents that were uniquely designed for us and us alone. And there's somebody out there who needs exactly what we have to offer.
That's right.
So.
That's a great recommendation. And, that's a great segue into a piece that I brought with me today because it's just so appropriate for the topic today. It was an excerpt from Course in Miracles.
Mm-hmm.
That was a comment that was made by Marianne Williamson and from her Return to Love. And I want to take just a second to read this because it's so appropriate. It says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You're a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that others don't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We are born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It is not just in some of us, it is in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fears, our presence automatically liberates others. And every time I read that, I get chills because it is exactly that way. Mm-hmm. With my passion, with what I'm doing, I see it with the people that you work with and the people that you help, and it is so appropriate. So with that, I think that we should go to our mailbox and grab a question and answer it, maybe have a chat about it. We had one person write in and ask, I want to do a business of my own and I can't decide what to do. How can I narrow it down to just one thing? One of the biggest suggestions that I have on that is to try to get some professional coaching. A coach can help you sort of hash out some of the ideas that you have in your head, help you narrow down your passions. So if you go to MakeMyVisionReal.Biz and go to the resource page, you'll see some coaches there. And you can either call in and we'll help you figure out who you should talk to, or you can make calls to them individually. And with that, I would like to thank Shelby for joining us today. Thank you so much for being on the show.
My pleasure.
I loved your stories. And so that's all the time we have for today. I want you to be sure to join us next week as we start to explore setting up the legal structure of your business. Our guests are going to be Pam Kurt from Kurt Law Offices in Wickliffe. And remember that this show is for you. So be sure to send your questions and your comments for the show to help at MakeMyVisionReal.Biz. That's help at MakeMyVisionReal.Biz. And I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. I wish you good luck and good business. Have a great evening.
You've been listening to Make My Vision Real, a local resource for starting and growing your small business. Visit MakeMyVisionReal.Biz for more information on connections to local resources. Send your questions for next week's show to help@MakeMyVisionReal.Biz. Today's program was brought to you by the Business Launcher Workshop, a workshop designed by women for women to make their business vision real. Find out more at BusinessLauncherWorkshop.com. The show's founder and host, Susan Swartzwelder, is a small business specialist. Tune in every Sunday from 6 to 7 p.m. as Susan and her guests share ideas and resources to help you start and grow the successful business of your dreams.